2018. It's great to have some people here tonight in the gallery. I would like to begin tonight's meeting by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land which now comprises Greater Shepparton. We pay respect to their tribal elders, we celebrate their continuing culture and we acknowledge the memory of their ancestors. Item number 2, privacy notice. This public meeting is being streamed live via our Facebook page and made available for public access on our website along with the official minutes of this meeting. All care is taken to maintain your privacy. However, as a visitor in the public gallery, it is assumed that your consent is given in the event that your image is broadcast to the public. It is also assumed that your consent is given to the use and disclosure of any information that you share at the meeting, including personal or sensitive information, to any person who accesses those recordings or minutes. Councillors, do we have any apologies tonight?
I'll note the apology of Councillor Dennis Patterson and recommend that leave be granted.
Should I have a seconder, please?
I'll second that, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Adam. All in favour? Motion carried, unopposed. Councillors, do we have any conflicts of interest that need to be declared tonight? No. I go to item number 5, confirmation of minutes of the previous meeting. Is any item of the minutes opposed? No. Would a councillor please like to move the recommendation? Button. What would you like to move?
I'd like to move the recommendation that the minutes of the ordinary council meeting held on the 20th of November 2018 as circulated be confirmed.
Very much. I have a seconder, please. Councillor Ozavari. All those in favour? Against? Motion carried, unopposed. Item number 6. Do we have any questions tonight, Mr. Harriott?
We do, Madam Mayor. 2 questions from Susan Daniel. Susan's in the gallery there. Welcome, Susan. First question, why can't the trucks travel along the GV highway to connect to the Grahamville Road alternate route at Kingupna, which is only a mere additional 8 kilometres, instead of using Ford Road that is residential, full of houses, and the Rumballara aged care facility? Response, the trucks could use this route, however choose not to because of the distance and the location of the school crossing. Question 2, again from Susan. Why spend millions of dollars on Ford Road to turn it into an east-west truck link when we already have a purpose-built GV highway that connects to Grahamville Road alternate route at Kingupna, which does not require any cost from council or Vic roads, just an extra 8 kilometres for the trucks at the current faster speed of 80 and 100. The response, Ford Road has growing truck and vehicle traffic that warrants planning for future upgrades. This is the purpose of the current study. Thank you.
For that, Mr. Harriott. Councillors will now go to page 2, item 7.1, contract 1888, Balaclava Road, Verney Road intersection, Goulburn Valley Water Main relocation. Would a councillor please like to move the recommendation? Councillor Giovannetti.
Happy to move that, Madam Mayor, that the recommendation on page 2, that the council accept the tender submitted by NL Drainage Proprietary Limited of Tatura for contract number 1888, construction of Balaclava Road, Verney Road intersection, Goulburn Valley Water Main relocation for a lump sum price of $677,869.50, and we authorise the CEO to sign and seal the contract documents.
Thank you very much. So I have a seconder, please. Councillor Ozavari. Councillor Giovannetti, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is a project that we have to have undertaken. As people may be aware, we are looking at upgrading the roads along Balaclava Road, Verney Road, New Dookie Road and Horden Street. This works will form part of that overall work, but the infrastructure that's currently there has been there for quite some time, and the impact of the busy roads on it have obviously taken it to a point where rectification works either needed to be undertaken or, in this case, a full project undertaken to renew the works. NL Drainage from Tatura were the successful tenderers. There were 4 tenderers put in for the job, and NL Drainage were the successful ones. They've done work for council before on various other projects, and as far as I'm aware, they've always completed the work satisfactorily.
Thank you very much, Councillor Giovannetti. Councillor Ozavari, would you like to speak to the motion?
No, thanks, Madam Mayor.
Any councillor wish to speak against the motion? Councillor Summer.
Sorry to start off with an objection, but I'm not disputing whether the works need doing. It's clear that eventually this will have to happen, but I'm questioning the timing of this. As early as this morning, we've been listening to people who wanted to consult about the overall project of the upgrade, and they have a perception that they're not being heard. There's a perception out there that we could be quite a top-down council that are going ahead with things without properly consulting, and I don't want that to be the impression. I know everybody's keen to just get on with the project, but we do have that responsibility to the people to make sure that they are heard. And this project was flagged way back when Andrew Fairley Avenue traffic studies identified that it was a very dangerous intersection. That was way back, like 2012. So I'm not sure if it's really required to rush forward over Christmas and just put more uncertainty out there for the public, because we are in the middle of consultation and we are listening. And I'm hoping that if we can have a bit more consultation with the community, then there won't be any kind of misunderstanding of this particular work.
Councillor Summer, would any councillor wish to speak for the motion? Speak against the motion? Councillor Giovannetti, do you have any final comments?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just in closing, I do accept what Councillor Summer is saying in relation to the consultation for the road reconstruction works. This is slightly different. This is drainage work that needs to be undertaken now, and I can see no issue with it commencing prior to the roadworks. Consultation is a very important part of council business. I do accept that, and I know there is some concern from the residents in that area, but I believe the council now is going through the correct process with consultation, and many of the issues that the ratepayers have raised will be rectified. Will be addressed.
Thank you very much, Councillor Giovannetti. We will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Motion carried. Councillors, will now go to page 6, item 7.2, contract 1881, supply of landfill compactor. Would a councillor please like to move the motion? Councillor Ozavari.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to move the recommendation on page 6, items 1 and 2.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Abdullah. Councillor Ozavari, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Essentially, this compactor, the Tana, meets the functional requirements of the landfill, has an established track record and can be modified to perform an additional function with little modification, which, based upon the panel assessment, is a relevant consideration, and its multi-purpose functionality for mine makes for an attractive package. In both cases, neither machine was considered perfect for the role, but that wasn't the determining factor. Council experiences with the existing machinery were largely positive, given the pre-existing track record. And for mine, the more you get out of the machinery in terms of its multiplicity of function is a strong selling point after price and reliability.
Thank you very much. Councillor Abdullah, would you like to speak to the motion?
I would just like to add that, of course, this is about tender for the supply of landfill compactor, and there were two proposals that were received. Tana is a familiar brand, as Councillor Ozavari has mentioned, to work with. It has, and some of the factors that contributed to this preference include better reliability and also shorter delivery period and better support service. Also that there is no additional equipment required for the compactor to manage temporary covering of waste, which is at Cosgrove. And in comparison to the other brand, which required a cylinder to work with this compactor, and it had an additional price of $15,000. So that's another additional factor in terms of how the evaluation was, what outcome the evaluation determined. The lump sum price, it includes a trade-in of existing compactor as well. So I just wanted to highlight that. And yeah, that's about it.
Thank you very much. Would any councillor wish to speak against the motion? Would any councillor like to speak to the motion? Councillor Summer.
It's one of the fun parts of this job is buying new toys like big compactors. And as was stated, the previous Tana served us very well, good reputation and a high quality product. Of note, the machine has the capacity to later fit a Tarpomatic system. And currently we need to use a 3-foot dirt cover each day over at Cosgrove landfill, and that's time consuming and it takes up airspace, which costs us money. Tarp-o-matic is an actual tarp that's laid down by the compactor and rolled up again, which obviously saves on time and money. It may require EPA approval to use the system, but Tarp-o-matic do have experience working well with environmental bodies across Australia in order to comply with regulations. So I'm really pleased we're going down this path just to future-proof other cover options. And yeah, looking forward to seeing it in action.
Much, Councillor Summer. Would any other councillor wish to speak to the motion? We will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Motion carried unopposed. Councillors, we now go to page 11, item 7.3, contract 1884, the Vic Fleet Open Panel SPC motor vehicles. Would a councillor like to move a motion, please?
Madam Mayor, I would like
Adam?
to move the motion on page 11. The recommendation, is a motion that the council agree to participate in the Vic Fleet Open Panel SPC motor vehicles for a period of 5 years. The contract will be referred to as Contract 1884 with an estimated value of $5.5 million, including GST over 5 years. And point 2, authorise the Chief Executive Officer to sign and seal the contract documents.
Thank you very much, Councillor Adam. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor
Happy to second
Jebonidi.
that, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. Councillor Adam, would you like to speak to the motion?
I think this is just in keeping with our the great ideas that this council's had for many years. It is to be part of a large buying group, and this is what basically this is. There's quite a few suppliers that are listed that we can choose from, and I know some councils have some concerns in respect to battery-powered vehicles, but there's quite a few or a couple of different suppliers there that do actually supply that type of vehicle. This is the panel that we get to choose from. It doesn't mean we have to choose particular vehicles. That's another discussion down the track for our officers and the organisation as to what we actually choose. So I think it's a great spread of suppliers, and I'm confident we'll get the best price on offer.
Great, thank you very much. Councillor Jebonidi, would you like to speak to the motion?
I think Councillor Adams covered it very well, Madam Mayor.
Any councillor wish to speak against the motion? Councillor Summer?
I'm objecting to this motion on principle of the 50% price weighting attached to the tender. I have mentioned the 50% price weighting being a bit of a barrier to good outcomes in the past, and this is a shining example of what could be a missed opportunity in favour of the cheapest option or the status quo or less than the status quo. So with our large buying power, especially when it comes to fleet, we do have social responsibility. And we need to look at the triple bottom line, and that means environmental and social as well as financial. They need equal weighting. And one example of local spend being important, even as mentioned in here, it was our dying Australian automotive industry. So perhaps if more weighting was applied to local content in these situations, we would still have an industry if local governments banded together with their purchasing power. What's concerning to me is the absence of detail in provision for electric or hybrid vehicles, as mentioned by Councillor Adam. We currently use hybrids, and I don't know if we're going to replace them with hybrids or go another way that's cheaper. I do know that other councils and the Goulburn Broken Greenhouse Alliance Committee are working towards joint procurement for regional charge points. They've provided a report that's 120 pages long to support this direction. So without specified hybrid or electric vehicle outcomes, it's potentially, a bit of an insult for everyone who's been working towards a more sustainable outcome over many years. Without large council buying power, regional charge points will not be feasible. Whereas if we did go down that way, it would bring down the price of electric vehicles through the economies of scale. As role models, it will encourage broader members of the public to consider buying electric, and it also demonstrates that we're a sustainable, forward-thinking council who cares about the future of the planet. So I'm told that there is provision for these vehicles within the tender, but with a local government who puts price at 50% every time, it's hard to believe that we will actually go down that road. So 5 years is a long time to be locked out of the electric vehicle market. So until we've done further detailed consideration, I can't support that contract.
Madam Mayor, I just wanted to indicate that this is a report in relation to a panel of suppliers which we can go and purchase vehicles from. It is separate from our fleet procedure, which deals with all the issues that Councillor Summer is talking about.
Yes, but as I said at the very beginning, the in-principle objection is to the 50% price weighting for all those risks that I mentioned.
Thank you for that, Councillor Summer. Would any councillor wish to speak for the motion? Any councillor wish to speak against the motion? Councillor Adam, do you have any closing comments?
Madam Mayor, as our CEO just explained briefly, this does not limit council from purchasing from any other supplier. This is just a panel where we know that if we actually take advantage of, we can get a better price, number one. Number two, as I said earlier on, some of these suppliers do supply hybrid vehicles, and no doubt within the next 5 years, I'm sure that some of these suppliers will probably supply full electric vehicles. I don't know that for a fact, but I'm guessing they will. So I think we're just covering all options here. And to exactly what we choose and what we purchase over the next 5 years, that's another discussion, and it's another motion at another meeting. So I just can't fully understand what Councillor Summer is alluding to. Yes, in respect to the 50% weighting, well, that could be a pro or a con, and that's yet to be seen.
Thank you very much, Councillor Adam. We will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Motion carried. Councillors, will now go to page 15, item 7.4, contract 1877, Cosgrove 3 infrastructure and building construction works. Would a councillor like to move a motion? Councillor Abdullah?
I would like to move the recommendation on page 15 as a motion. This is about the contract 1877 Cosgrove 3 infrastructure and building construction works.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Al-Zavari. Councillor Abdullah, would you like to speak to the motion?
So this is about the infrastructure and building works for Cosgrove 3 landfill. Cosgrove 3 has been designated as the state hub, so this project is very significant to us and for the whole state. There are two parts of the Cosgrove 3 landfill construction project. Part 1 is about cell and leachate pond, which is under construction, and this particular motion is about infrastructure and building works. So, and a tender was invited, and in response to that, there were 5 responses received. There were 2 options provided to tenderers. One included all the specifications plus the construction of education center, and there was another option which excluded the construction of education center. Now, having evaluated the 5 responses, our evaluation panel is now satisfied that based on all the criteria, ERTEC is a good fit. It's a good value to council. ERTEC has strong experience in landfill infrastructure and building works. And it's exciting time for us because Cosgrove 3 landfill includes features. It's a landfill of state significance, as I've said. It will have sealed road, car parks, weighbridge, and education center. So all these developments are included as part of this tender, and it's a good progress that now we are so close to awarding this contract. I hope to see Cosgrove 3 starts operations in 2019, for which we have to make a decision here now. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Councillor Abdullah. Councillor Al-Zavari, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Any councillor wish to speak against the motion? Would any councillor like to speak to the motion? Would Councillor Summer?
It goes to show what a large budget item waste is when you look at the amount that's going to cost us to build this new hole in the ground to take all our waste. I believe we're taking a loan to cover this, which the rationale is that future generations who use the airspace can pay for it via rates. I don't necessarily subscribe to that because past generations have been filling up landfill for a long time now, and we wouldn't need a new one if we were more sustainable. But in moving forward, as stated, it's important, it's regionally significant. There's only so many landfill licences to be approved by the state, and we are one. Thankfully, from the hard work of our staff, we've managed that. We continue to follow best practice in terms of design, and I'm looking forward to a business case that will come to us about this site. And I'm also glad about including the Education Centre, because those Follow Your Waste tours are becoming increasingly popular, and public education is vital in terms of reducing contamination rates and waste overall. Potentially a more pressing project is upgrading the transfer station, but that will be another conversation for another day.
Thank you very much, Councillor Summer. Would any councillor wish to speak to the motion? We will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Motion carried, unopposed. Councillors, we now go to page 19, item 7.5, contract 1887, the Maud Street redevelopment, bus interchange and plaza construction. Would the council like to move a motion? Councillor Summer.
It's been my pleasure to move the recommendation as a motion on page 19 that the council, one, accept points 1 and 2.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Sutton. Councillor Summer, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, thank you. It's been such a long time coming. The first stage of this CBD revitalisation was being completed when I was first elected back in 2012, and that's over 6 years ago, so it's been a long wait. Over the years, we've been knocked back for grants, and now we've sort of been forced to take matters into our own hands. So by splitting the project into 2 pieces, we can fund it under our own budget, and I think there might be some contribution also, but I'd have to clarify that. Public toilets are required in that area of town. We've heard that loud and clear. Maud Central toilets are locked by the body corporate, and Kmart toilets are arguably not fit for purpose. This will deliver new toilet cubicles, a parent-baby room, adult change table, bike locker, open space plaza, and 8 new bus stops. So it's a very Rolls-Royce type of plaza, and it's going to serve the community well by bridging the space between Centrelink and the CBD and setting us up for the next CBD redevelopment stage, which involves upgrading the rest of Maud Street to better increase the flow of pedestrian traffic into the mall, which would help local business. So I'm also glad that it's a local who won this tender.
Thank you very much. Councillor Sutton, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, I would. I'd just like to say that we have received government funding for this from the Government's Building Better Regions Fund,
Nice.
Department of Justice Public Safety Infrastructure Fund, Public Transport Victoria's contribution for bus shelters component, and Vic Roads funding for the raised pedestrian crossing component of the project. So we have received quite a significant amount.
Does it say it?
Great, thank you very much, Councillor Sutton. Would any councillor wish to speak against the motion? Would any councillor wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Abdullah?
I would just like to add that that the recommendation is to approve the tender submitted by Mawson Constructions, which is a local company, which is really good. And they have done council projects in the past. They did propose a longer than the requested project duration. However, the finish date still falls in the period of 2018 to 2019. So it is really important that the project is completed without much delays. And I'm sure that the outcome of the project will contribute to better functioning, safe and attractive public amenities in the heart of Shepparton, so which is very encouraging to see. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Would any councillor wish to speak to the motion? We will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Motion carried, unopposed. Councillors, will now go to page 24, item 7.6, review of the Waste and Resource Recovery Management Strategy 2013 for 2023. Would a council like to move a motion, please? Councillor Abdullah?
I would like to move the motion on page number 25, to move the recommendation on page 25 as motion, and that the council authorize the exhibition of the draft Waste and Resource Recovery Management Strategy 2018 revision for a period of 28 days, commencing on 19 December 2018 and concluding on 1st February 2019, and also to invite submissions from the community on the draft Waste and Resource Recovery Management Strategy 2018 revision.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Summer. Councillor Abdullah, would you like to speak to the motion?
So this Waste and Resource Recovery Management Strategy 2013 to 2023, at this point it's a mid-term review of the draft version, which is going, and the recommendation is to
we just need to table the document.
Oh, yeah. All right. Yes, so I'll just clarify what it means. So this is the document here. There's a recommendation to table this document for exhibition to go out for community consultation. This document has got some minor updates. This version of the document has got some minor updates which were not present in the version that is attached to the agenda. And all the basically it's this whole strategy review is about the midterm review of this strategy. For council, it is important to provide reliable and sustainable waste management services in our municipality. And the objectives of our waste management strategy also need to be consistent with the statewide waste and resource recovery objectives, as well as our Goulburn Valley Waste and Resource Recovery Implementation Plan. So this revised strategy is basically, it has structured our key areas of waste management services into five key areas. They include curbside waste collection, resource recovery centers, landfill, waste education, and litter and illegal dumping. The strategy talks about the current status of where we are in these areas and also some future goals. The strategy talks about some popular areas of interest for our community, such as hard waste collection, tip tickets, provision of 360-litre bin, illegal dumping, food and organic waste management, green bin, weekly collection, and fortnightly red bin collection. So these are some of the very interesting and popular aspects of this waste management strategy, the draft strategy. Waste management is an essential service, and it's one of the core functions of council. So it is really important that we get it right. And the statewide objectives of waste reduction and maximization of resource recovery are basically the key drivers of our waste strategy. Now, I would encourage our community to have a close look at this document, and if they can't read it cover to cover, at least focus on the strategy, section 8 of the strategy, which is a table that outlines our key strategic actions and timelines for each of these actions. And I would just encourage our community to have a look at this strategy and especially the strategic actions. That's all.
Thank you very much. Councillor Summer, would you like to speak to the motion?
I don't have much to add on that. That pretty much covered it all. Thank you, Councillor Abdullah. The only thing I will say, again, is just to reinforce that we do need community input. Last time this came to us was back in 2013, and there was a huge discussion in the public about hard rubbish collection and tip tickets, and then when it came down to the nitty-gritty of actually having input into the strategy, deafening silence. So we need people to actually speak up. It does look like an onerous type of document, but as Councillor Abdullah conveniently mentioned, that there is a table in there that clearly sets out dot points on what we intend to do. So if you want your green bin collected every week instead of every fortnight, let us know. If you want hard rubbish, let us know. Otherwise, we don't have anything to go on and it'll just be the status quo.
Thank you very much. Would any councillor wish to speak against the motion? Would any councillor like to speak to the motion? Okay, we'll now go to vote. All those in favour? Against? Motion carried, unopposed. Councillors, will now go to item 7.7 on page 29, appointment of community members for Sale Yards Advisory Committee for the council, and the recommendation is also on page 29. Would the council like to move the motion? Thank you, Councillor Ozavari.
I'd like to...
Got to be quicker.
The quick and the dead. I'd like to move the recommendation contained on page 21, items 1 and 2.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder, please?
Page 21.
29.
29. Do I have a seconder, please?
Second it. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Adam. Councillor Zavari, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. First, I'd like to acknowledge the presence of former councillor Kevin Ryan, who is intricately involved in this, as he's one of the representatives that's being appointed to the advisory committee of the Sale Yards. Together with Kevin Ryan and Graham Montgomery, they went through a process, and knowing former councillor Kevin Ryan from his involvement with council, Sale Yards was one of his pets. He really loved it, was right into it, and all the knowledge that he can bring gives me a great deal of confidence in relation to the future direction of this sale yards.
Well said. Thank you. Councillor Adam.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Look, such was the high standard of the applicants, we had to amend the terms of reference to allow 3 people to come on. We couldn't decide, basically, so I commend their commitment to this organisation, or to this committee, and I know that Councillor Kevin Ryan, or former councillor, sorry, as Councillor Orasvari mentioned, is intimately involved in this whole committee for many, many years, and I can just imagine if former Councillor Ryan wasn't put onto this committee, I think I might use to be red. So congratulations, Gunnar, and to the other applicants as well.
Thank you very much, Councillor Adam. Would any councillor wish to speak against the motion? Would any councillor wish to speak to the motion?
Yes, Madam Mayor.
Thank you.
The sale yards has been a long-standing success story for the council over many, many years, and largely attributed to the performance of the contractor that's managed the facility, the oversight of the council, but in particular the work of the advisory committee. I think they've done a fantastic job for the council over the years, and looking at the 3 appointments now, I'm particularly confident that role will not only just continue but even enhanced as to what it's been in the past. I must admit, when I got my papers and I saw this Kevin Ryan, I didn't know who this bloke was. I've never heard of him called Kevin before, but I'm sure Gunnar, you'll make your presence felt on this committee. You'll have a point of view, and I'm sure, knowing the other 2 people on the committee there too, you might have a bit of a bun fight on your hands from time to time to get your own way.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hazelman. Would any other councillor wish to speak to the motion? And just thank you for your contribution, continual contribution to it. It's much appreciated. We'll now go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Motion carried, unopposed. Councillors, now go to page 32, item 8.1, Draft Volunteer Strategy 2019-2022. The recommendation is also on page 32. Would a councillor like to move a motion, please? Someone?
The motion as printed on page 32, points 1 and 2.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Orasvari. Councillor Summer, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yeah, this comes up from time to time. The public by now are probably quite familiar with our volunteer strategy and how we're trying to get people active in that space. There's 4 strategic directions, which is promotion, education, recruitment, support and celebrate, which is 1, and recognise. So I'd just like to thank everyone for the work that has been undertaken by our many volunteers. It can be quite cumbersome in terms of paperwork, but once you're in there helping out, it is a huge benefit in terms of being active and social in society. New volunteers will learn the benefits of being a volunteer from the existing people, and hopefully that cycle will continue.
Much, Councillor Summer. Councillor Orasvari, would you like to speak to the motion?
Councillor Summers said it all.
Very good. Would any councillor like to speak against the motion? Would any councillor like to speak to the motion? We'll now go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Motion carried, unopposed. Councillors, now go to item 8.2 on page 36. The recommendation is also on page 36. Draft Greater Shepparton Multicultural Strategy 2019-2022. Would a councillor like to move a motion? Councillor Summer.
The recommendation as a motion on page 36, points 1 and 2.
Much. Do I have a seconder, please?
I'll second, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Hazelman. Councillor Summer, would you like to speak to the motion?
This is another strategy that comes up from time to time, and people would be familiar with it. We are trying to reinforce that this council is a role model, and we do strive to provide a welcoming space for people of all cultures. So this ensures that we are continually reflective and respectful of people who might have come from other cultures and inclusive in how we approach them. So it's a very good community initiative.
Thank you very much. Councillor Sutton, would you like to speak to the motion? Sorry, were you seconded? Oh, sorry, Councillor Hazelman.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you.
This is the 3rd iteration of the plan, or similar. It started off as a cultural diversity and inclusion strategy, and now it's a far more simpler title called the multicultural strategy. The report, I'm not going to go through it in great detail, but it highlights a number of the success stories and activities that have emanated out of the strategies in the past, and being out for public exhibition, I would only invite submissions from the community and stakeholders to ensure that we add a bit of robustness to the strategy and put a bit of meat on the bones as well.
Thank you very much. Any council wish to speak against the motion? Any council wish to speak to the motion? We'll now go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Motion carried, unopposed. Council now go to page 40, item 9.1, Council Plan 2018-2019 Quarter 1 Progress Report. The recommendation is also on page 40. Would the council like to move a motion, please?
So moved, Madam Mayor. I'd like to move the recommendation on page 40 that states that the Council note the progress and summary reports for the 2017-21 Council Plan, which provides details in relation to achieving the measures of success identified in the Council Plan 2017 to 2021.
Much. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Alzavari. Councillor Giovannetti, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thanks, Madam Mayor. We were given a briefing on this some weeks ago by one of the council staff, James Nolan, and I've got to say that the areas that are covered within this progress report, leadership and governance, social, economic, built and environment, surprisingly, as some people may think, we've done extremely well in. We've had significant improvement in all areas. This is all being judged by the community. I think each quarter we have something like about, correct me Peter, but I think something like last time about 400 people were contacted, which was over and above the number contacted in the last quarter, and that will continue to increase each quarter. So it's pleasing to note that the community are now seeing that council is progressing in each of these areas.
Thank you very much, Councillor Giovannetti. Councillor Alzavari, would you like to speak to the motion?
No, thank you, Madam Mayor.
Any council wish to speak against the motion? Would any council like to speak to the motion? We'll now go to the vote. All those in favour? Motion carried, unopposed. Councillors will now go to item 9.2 on page 43, contract 1862, professional veterinary services. The recommendation is also on page 43. Would the council like to move a motion, please?
I'll move the recommendation contained on page 43, Madam Mayor, items 1 through to 3 inclusive.
Thank you, Councillor Alzavari. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Sutton. Councillor Alzavari, would you like to speak to the motion?
Madam Mayor, I think the motion itself is very self-explanatory and is just reflective of another one of the various contracts that we need to let. In this case, it's the professional veterinary services. I can remember when I first came on council that we had a bit of a reputational issue in relation to animal welfare in terms of euthanasia rates and various other things associated with veterinary services. I'm pleased to say that based upon my knowledge that we've redressed that negative perception to a point, and this is another example of the contracts that we have to implement.
Councillor Sutton, would you like to speak to the motion? Do any council wish to speak against the motion? Any council wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Summer.
Councillor Alzavari's comment about the reputation we had at the beginning, I think that's very poignant. It does show that public sentiment can influence policy and outcomes if they make sure that we are aware of the issues. We heard that we weren't doing enough to protect the animals, so we did reduce euthanasia and worked with rescue to rehome animals. The statistics speak for themselves, but we've made dramatic improvements across animal welfare sectors, all of them pretty much, I believe. And this contract ensures that animals will receive timely veterinary treatment, and we may even look at things like future joint ventures such as complementary microchipping days potentially with the new vet. I've used GB Vet services myself and found them to be exceptionally high quality. They're very professional, very friendly, very efficient, so I think that our animals will be in good hands.
Thank you very much, Councillor Summer. Would any council wish to speak to the motion? We'll now go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Motion carried, unopposed. We now go to page 47, item 9.3, contract 1876, installation and supply of photocopier hardware and services. The recommendation is is on page 47. Would a council like to move a motion, please? Councillor Giovannetti.
Madam Mayor, I'm pleased to move the recommendation on page 47. This states the council accept the tender submitted by Next Office Tech of Shepparton, Victoria for contract 1876 installation and supply of photocopier hardware and services for the lump sum price of $702,669, and we authorise the CEO to sign and seal development documents.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Ozavari. Councillor Giovannetti, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yeah, just briefly, Madam Mayor, look, this is pretty straightforward. This is obviously, as the motion suggests, the installation of photocopier equipment and all the bits and pieces that it does. Just, I suppose, one thing we should point out is that Next Office Tech were not the cheapest tenderer, but staff believe that the service that they provide outweighs the differential in the tender price.
Thank you very much. Councillor Ozavari, would you like to speak to the motion?
No, thanks, Madam Mayor.
Any council wish to speak against the motion? Any council wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Summer?
A quick note, it actually looks like price hasn't come into the criteria at all in this one. So that's interesting. It's something like a photocopier, benefit to local region does get 25%, environmental sustainability does get a mention, price doesn't. So that's interesting, but I'm happy to accept.
Any council wish to speak to the motion? We'll now go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Motion carried unopposed. Councillors, we now go to item 9.4 on page 51, the Audit and Risk Management Committee Independent Member Remuneration. If I can get that word out, on page 51. The recommendation is also on page 51. Would a council like to move a motion, please?
Yes, Madam Mayor, I'm happy to move the motion that the council approve the independent members' request for an annual CPI increase to their remuneration effective immediately.
To the recommendation. So do we have a seconder, please?
Second, Madam Mayor.
And Councillor Giovannetti, would you like to...
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is an interesting one. Sorry, give me a minute, Les. I move this motion as I believe this group of independent community members deserve to receive a CPI increase, as do all other council staff. Our Independent Audit and Risk Management Committee have not received any increase to their remuneration for 4 years, and it's time that we rectified that. I realise that some councillors will state that our Independent Audit Committee are paid higher than some other similar-sized municipalities, but on the other hand, they are paid less than a number of smaller municipalities. There is no industry average for these committees that I'm aware of. This committee is the conduit between council staff and councillors. They monitor our expenses, check our processes and ensure our contracts are awarded according to our procedures. They are the people who independently audit what council does. This information is provided to us as councillors. It's my belief that we need to show these committee members that we value the service they provide to us as councillors and the community. I'm aware firsthand the hours they spend in researching for the Audit and Risk Management Committee. They meet 5 times a year and are paid $850 a meeting, and the chairman receives $1,075 a meeting. What I'm recommending is the CPI of 1.9%, or a grand total of $16.15 per meeting for members, and an increase of $20.45 per meeting for the chairman, a grand total of $344.50. Obviously, council would pay more for our toasted sandwiches for lunch than what this increase would equate to. If we as a council wish to retain a high level of expertise on these external committees, I believe it's imperative that we show we are appreciative of their services by giving them a modicum of Christmas cheer.
Much, Councillor Giovannetti. Councillor Hazeman, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. I think this is the second time in recent years that a request from the committee has come forward for the consideration of this addition of the CPI increase. And I'd have to say, doing the comparisons with other regional councils, it's rather a subjective sort of process. We look at a number, but we don't actually do the comparisons in relation to a whole range of things with those councils in terms of their terms of reference, functionality, their budget, populations, scope of business, all of these things that would, if we were looking at a proper benchmarking process, we'd do a more comparison. We've looked at about 4 or 5 other municipalities that are roughly in the regional cities group. If we looked at the other half dozen in the regional cities group, we might have got a completely different comparison figure. The issue, though, is the CPI increase. I think it's a little bit unedifying that each year we go through this process of saying, are we going to allocate an extra $350 or so into the budget, rather than put it into a process where it's an annual CPI increase, which occurs in a lot of other municipalities. And I did a similar subjective set by having a look through other municipalities, which I could very quickly find. Some of the metros pay double the amount of base that we pay, plus a CPI minimum. Interestingly enough, at Geelong, the rate for the audit committee down there is set by the CEO, with an annual 2% increase mandated. If exceeded to, it's certainly not going to break our budget. I think it's an adequate response and an appropriate response to a request from the committee. And it's interesting that on a night when in preceding items in the budget we've just spent in the thick end of about $19 and a bit million without equivocation about the amount of money we're spending, we're about to have some sort of a debate about the expenditure of $342.50.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hazelman. Would any councillor wish to speak against the motion? Councillor Summer, I think.
Well, it's not really speaking against the motion. I just want a point of clarification here. Councillor Giovannitti, you've moved a motion here, but point 3 in the original recommendation talks about a review for the remuneration in February 2020. Have you got? Did you include that or not? Sorry.
I didn't, Councillor Adam, because that wouldn't be necessary if we apply the CPI increase annually.
Fine, just want to be clear on that.
Councillor Summer?
I'd like to foreshadow a motion, if I could please, which is the recommendation written by officers to us on page 51, that the council, number 1, refuse the independent members' request for an annual CPI increase to their remuneration. 2, note that a comparison of market rates does not currently support an increase in fees. And 3, review the Audit and Risk Management Committee's remuneration again in February 2020.
Would any councillor wish to speak to the motion? Any councillor wish to speak against the motion? Oh, sorry. Yes.
I would like to object to Councillor Giovanetti's motion. I think that the officers recommended the opposite for a reason, and I find it staggering that on an occasion like this, which will benefit probably less than a handful of people, we've deviated from the officers' recommendation, and there's more discussion here than there is about the council plan. So I think that is a sad indictment, really. Historically, remuneration for that group has been well over and above any comparable council benchmark, and you can read that as listed on page 52.
Point of order, Madam Mayor. What comparable?
Comparable as in regional councils. Latrobe potentially would not come under that because it's quite a large council, but officers have decided that Bendigo, Mildura, Wodonga, Ballarat and Wangaratta are comparable.
Again, my point of order was on what basis are they comparable?
The size of the council, the span. Are we going to go into a debate where it's question time? Because we can, but I'll probably need to take that on notice.
Comparable in population is the answer. So.
Is that all, Councillor Summer?
No, I've got a lot more to say about that.
Okay.
What I would say is that it was well over and above, and the committee in the past has basically been able to set whatever amount they liked. They'd come to council, they'd say, oh, we would like to be paid $200 more, and council would say yes. So slowly it crept up over to $1,000 per meeting for the chair, and it's currently at $1,075, and the independent members are $850 per meeting. So that's why over the last few years we've been refusing their requests in order to bring remuneration back in line with a standard that we're comfortable with and that the community would be comfortable with. But on the whole, we're still way above comparable councils. So I would believe that $1,000 per meeting is incentive enough to attract qualified members. to say otherwise, there's accountants out there who could potentially do the job just as well, and they're probably doing it quite tough. Now, if remuneration reflects expertise, we should have the most capable and qualified committee members in the state. Now, no offence to the members, but no committee is absolutely perfect. So unless we get an absolutely perfect committee that can sign off on things and when risks arise, really make sure that we are aware of those risks, especially with large projects, then I can't really accept that they need to be rewarded more. So we've just seen this national backlash from Scott Morrison increasing the pay of senior ministers. That's $1 million out of his budget, and for him it's probably just a plate of sandwiches too, for him. But for the real people out there, it's quite a bit. So we need to take a good hard look at ourselves and put it in perspective. I mean, look at what's happening in France. So I don't want to be part of a council accused of elitism in that we're not following a recommendation by our officers that was part of a strategy to bring our fees back in line with other councils. So I will object to the motion.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Summer. Have you finished there yet? Would any council wish to speak to the motion?
Yeah,
okay.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I wasn't going to, but now I will. I find it odd that Councillor Summer actually spoke against supporting the recommendation from the officers. But that being said, in respect to that small amount of money that we're talking about, I initially thought, I must confess, I probably thought similar to Councillor Summer in respect to the amount that's being paid, but the recommendation or the motion put forward by Councillor Giovannetti is about the increase. It's not so much about the base amount here. That is another debate. That's why I mentioned, will we review this in 2 years or 12 months' time? I'm not talking about reviewing the increase, but reviewing the base rate. So that said, I do support it. It is a plate of sandwiches at the end of the day. It's a symbolic gesture too, to show that we have confidence in our committee. Sitting on that committee for 2 years, I do appreciate the amount of work that goes into it, the amount of reading, and ultimately that committee is still overseen by the VAGO, the Victorian Auditor General's Office as well. But having said that, they're a great liaison between that office and this organisation, and they've done a fairly good job, I think, up until this date. To say they're not perfect, well, define perfect, I don't know what that means. So having said that, that's all I need to say.
Thank you very much. Would any other council wish to speak against the motion? Against the motion, Councillor Zavari.
Thank you for the opportunity, Madam Mayor. I've given this matter a lot of consideration, and for some people it might be small bickies, and there's a few issues, and I note comments by Councillor Hazelman in relation to the comparison of other councils, etc. But it's a subjective process, a starting point nonetheless, and a relevant consideration what other people are being paid. The amount that we're asking for, it's not the CPI increase for me that's the issue. It's the quantum in the first instance as the starting point for such allowances. Now, I note the position's voluntary. It'd be really easy to me to simply approve it, and I get the argument about the plate of sandwiches, the confidence, and all that. But that's not how I see it. It's not a big value, but for mine, they're compensated adequately in the first instance. And it presupposes the commentary around the table that they are not paid adequately. That's hence the reason why we should recognise them with an annual CPI increase. Look, that's my position, and I don't think I'm happy to support the recommendation that the officers have put up in the relation.
Thank you, Councillor Zavari. Would any council wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Abdullah.
I would just like to add that in view of the basic principle about having an annual CPI increase to the remuneration, for me it's more about setting it's not about the baseline dollar value. It's about the annual CPI, and it's perhaps very understandable and it's reasonable. The Audit and Risk Committee Management Committee has given some reasons that why they think that it is justified, and of course the current level of the amount of the effort that goes into this work by highly skilled individuals, and it's a very critical and responsible piece of work that goes into that is done by this committee. I think it is justified. So again, I'm not questioning, I'm not going to question the baseline dollar value. I would just say that the process has to be set right, and if the recommendation is about reviewing it in February 2020, and after that in another year or 2 years, why do we have to again and again come back to this process review? So I would suggest that we streamline the process once and for all, and then that's the expectations that is going to be set up and managed.
Much. Would any councillor wish to speak against the motion? Councillor Sutton?
I'd just like to say that this is a voluntary position and it's not expected to be paid as a regular position, a regular job. I think it's a voluntary thing. These people have taken this on knowing what they're being paid, and then after a couple of years or whatever, they decide that's not enough. And I just don't agree that we really need to pay them any more at this stage. I agree that we should be looking at it down the track just a little bit and just waiting to see what might happen.
Thank you very much, Councillor Sutton. Would any councillor wish to speak to the motion? Any councillor wish to speak against the motion? Would you like your right of reply, Councillor Giovannetti?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. Look, as Councillor Hazelman, Adam and Abdullah have said, this isn't about the base payment. It's purely about setting a process whereby these people have an increment the same as everybody else within the organisation. It gets away from the fact that we're going to have to come back every year to negotiate another increase for whatever reason it might be. What's happened in the past is in the past. The rate is there. They've asked for a purely CPI increase, and I believe that's what we should be offering.
All right, thank you very much. We'll now go to the vote. Reminder that this is Councillor Giovannetti's recommendation, the motion that we've moved. So we'll all go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Motion carried. Thank you very much. And thank you everyone for that contribution. We'll now go to page 54, item 9.5, appointment of new chairperson to the Audit and Risk Management Committee. There's also a recommendation on page 54. Would a councillor like to move a motion, please?
While I'm on a roll, Madam Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Giovannetti.
Move that the council appoint Mr John Colesia as chair of the Audit and Risk Management Committee, commencing in January 2019. That's it.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Adam. Councillor Giovannetti, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yeah, I'd like two sections of this motion. Oh, sorry, yes, I'd like to speak to the motion, but I'd also like to add something. John Colesia has been a Director of Finance of a number of local organisations. I believe he currently works at Gouge. He's a member of the Talamba community and is involved in a number of the committees out there. He's a very responsible and very well-respected member of the community, and I'm sure he will do an excellent job in this particular role. I would also like to request, not within the motion, but I'd just like to request that a letter of thanks be sent to Mr Jeff Cobbledick for his service as chairman of that committee for, I think, probably 4 years. And from a new councillor's perspective, or relatively new councillor's perspective, the work that Jeff has put into it, I think, has been fantastic, and we as a community certainly owe him a gratitude of thanks.
Very much. Councillor Adam, would you like to speak to the motion?
Just quickly to reiterate Councillor Giovannetti's comments. John Colegia, I had the honour of working with him for 2 years on the committee, and I've never seen anyone who considers any situation as much as John does. He brings a level of expertise to that committee that I think is beyond what we'd expect. So I fully support his appointment, and I also support Councillor Giovannetti's request in respect to sending a letter of thank you to Jeff Cobbledick.
Thank you very much. Would any councillor wish to speak against the motion? Would any councillor wish to speak to the motion? We'll now go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Motion carried. Unopposed. Councillors, will now go to page 61, item 9.8, contracts awarded under delegation and contracts advertised but yet to be awarded. The recommendation is also on page 61. Would a councillor like to...
Page 56.
Go back to 56.
Sorry?
Which one?
Matt's wearing a tie and everything.
Sorry, I'm on the wrong one. What do you have to do?
56.
Monthly report, isn't it?
Monthly financial report.
That's fine.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, we missed out, Matt.
Here we are. Nearly missed the financial report. Sorry, councillors. Item 9.6 on page 56, November 2018 monthly financial report. The recommendation is also on page 56. We've got that right now. Would a councillor like to move a motion? Thank you, Councillor Ozavari.
I'd like to move the recommendation contained on page 56.
Fine. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Sutton. Councillor Ozavari, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you for the opportunity, but I'd ask through the chair that Mr Matt Jarvis be given an opportunity to educate us.
Missed it, Matt.
Thank you. Just to summarise the income statement, the year-to-date operating surplus remains steady with the Q1 adopted forecast year-to-date budget. Similarly, the full-year projected surplus of just over $14 million also remains steady with the Q1 adopted forecast. Moving to the capital works statement, the year-to-date actually is slightly behind the Q1 adopted forecast year-to-date budget, roughly 4%. But this variance is largely due to the timing of works at the Cosgrove landfill. As at the end of November, just over $10 million of the current full-year capital works forecast has been spent, and the majority of those works has been in roads and on council buildings. And finally, just to summarise the balance sheet, the full-year forecast working capital remains within the council target band, which is above 120%. Thank you.
Matt, Councillor Sutton, would you like to speak to the motion? Does the council wish to speak against the motion? Would the council wish to speak to the motion? We'll now go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Motion carried, unopposed. Right, 9.7, yep. Council, now go to item 9.7 on page 58. The recommendation is also on page 58. Shepparton Show Me 2017-2018 Annual Report. Would a council like to move a motion, please?
Move the recommendation contained on page 58, Madam Mayor, that the council receive and note the 2017-18 Shepparton Show Me Committee Annual Report.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder, please?
Councillor
Giovanetti. Councillor Ozavari, would you like to speak to the motion?
Not particularly, other than to say that people have been seeing the great things happen here, campaign, Shep Square activation, the various markets that are running around the place, and being on the committee as long as I have, I can say that the committee remains passionate, enthusiastic and committed to making the lot of people in Greater Shepparton, as far as the trade is concerned, a lot better and attracting very, very good quality events.
Thank you very much. Councillor Giovanetti, would you like to speak to the motion?
Well, just reiterating what Councillor Ozavari has said, I think that what we've done this year through Shep Show Me has been a credit to the group and to the municipality as a whole. I'm very much looking forward to the new Charles Woolley ads that I believe are in part of production at the moment, and I think that that will further enhance the reputation of the municipality out and about within the community. It's great to go to different places, Ballarat, etc., where I've ran into people and said, we've seen your ad on the local television. And that's a great thing, I think, that entices people to come up to this area.
Thank you very much. Councillor Giovanetti, would any councillor wish to speak against the motion? Would any councillor wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Summer.
Bit of a mixed bag on what I have to say, so I hope Councillor Ozavari still speaks to me. But I would like to start by saying that every single person on that committee is an exceptional community member, and they should all be congratulated for having the best interests of Shepparton at heart, and also that much of the data from this annual report can be extrapolated out into further strategies to assist our CBD. But I do think it's healthy to step back and have a look at whether initiatives deliver the bang for the buck. I think the Show Me model may need a bit of an overhaul or review moving forward. They're a very heavily funded, high-profile committee to promote business in the CBD, collectively upwards of $600,000 per annum, which is not small. I believe the contribution towards Shepparton Show Me in our CBD is too wide. When so many businesses contribute, it dilutes the impact of these investments. So I struggle with how we're going to help businesses in the mall when the marketplace, which is also arguably in direct competition, also has a say in where the money goes. And so far it seems to be working, but there's a lot more we can do to fill up those shops. So some people aren't aware of what Show Me actually does, and it's nice to see it all listed in the annual report. But overall, it seems to be it's a heavy exercise in branding. So Shepparton Show Me logos, the blue, So a lot of the sponsored projects listed were already funded by council money from our events department, and that could be accused of double dipping in a way. And the visitation numbers were high, but it's arguable whether those events were going to go ahead anyway. But anyway, that's further discussion down the line. We have reviewed Shepparton Show Me in the past, and perhaps it's time we had another look at it.
Much. Councillor Summer. Would any councillor wish to speak to the motion? We'll now go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Motion carried unopposed. Councillors, now we'll go to page 61, item 9.8, contracts awarded under delegation and contracts advertised but yet to be awarded. The recommendation is also on page 61. Would a councillor like to move a motion, please? I'd like to move a motion. Councillor Al-Zavari, thank you.
I'll move the recommendation contained on page 61, items 1, 2 and 3. Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. Do I have
I'll second, Madam Mayor.
seconder? Councillor Hazelman. Councillor Al-Zavari, would you like to speak to the motion?
No, not really. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Mr.
Councillor Hazelman, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yeah, Madam Mayor, I'll repeat what I said before. In this agenda, we've allocated something close to about $19 million, and we see a range of other contracts here where tenders have closed, they're currently being evaluated, and that's what you would expect at this time of the year when we're very heavily embarked on the delivery of our capital works program. So no doubt over the next few meetings we'll see a range of these contracts come forward, and similar sorts of dollars will be allocated to make sure that these services are provided. I hesitate to suggest that one of these might even provide a reason for a special meeting in January.
Thank you very much. Councillor Hazelman. Any councillor wish to speak against the motion? Any councillor wish to speak to the motion? Councillors now go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Motion carried unopposed. Councillors, we now go to item 9.9, councillor representation on committees on page 66. The recommendation is on page 66, 67, 68 and 69. Would a councillor like to move a motion, please?
I'll move that motion.
Councillor Adam.
Recommendation on pages 66, 67, 68 and part of 69.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Giovanetti. Councillor Adam, would you like to speak to the motion?
Well, this is an annual event, Madam Mayor, thank you. It's our council committees, and this, after much discussion and, dare I say, negotiation between councillors, this is the final list where we've been placed onto these committees. No, I shouldn't say placed on these committees. We've taken up the opportunity to sit on these committees. Some councillors have interest in certain areas, and they've expressed them, and that's why they're sitting on certain committees. But it's a really good mix. Council does mix it up over the many of the years to give everyone a different experience, which I think is really, really helpful in our own personal growth as well, and better understanding the community. So there it is in front of us. We have our jobs, now we have to go and do them.
Thank you very much. Councillor Giovanetti, would you like to speak to the motion?
I think Councillor Adams summed it up very well, Madam Mayor.
Twice.
Any councillor wish to speak against the motion? Would any councillor wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Al-Zavari.
Madam Mayor, thank you. I'd just like to, because the committees that I'm on at the moment are the same ones that I've been on, and I just want to take an opportunity to acknowledge the great work on the Greater Shepparton Safety Communities Advisory Committee, Joel Board, council employee who does a great job, and I'd like to also acknowledge Matt Innes-Irons, Laura Church and Fiona Legasic on the Shepparton Show Me Committee, who are a great team and work very, very hard on it.
Thank you very much. Councillor Al-Zavari, would any councillor wish to speak to the motion? We'll now go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Motion carried unopposed. Councillors, we now go to page 75, item 10.1, the China, Hong Kong and Jakarta Delegation Report for 2018. Would a councillor like to move a motion, please? Councillor Adam.
I'll move that recommendation on page 76.
Very much. Do I have a seconder, please?
Motion.
Councillor Ozavari. Councillor Adam, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, I think I should. Madam Mayor, obviously this council embarked a few years ago with an international engagement strategy, and this trip to Hong Kong and China trip was part of this strategy that we've developed. I think it is absolutely necessary that we continue with this process. Having visited the first time to China myself, I think it's invaluable. It's about building a brand overseas. It's about assisting our horticultural industry and our dairy industry as well in actually establishing links with not only foreign investors or foreign buyers, it's also with our own government actually. Some of these trips, I think you may support me on this one, Madam Mayor, that you go to China, all these different places, and you're meeting with Australian delegates that you normally wouldn't get the opportunity to meet in Australia. So I think it's absolutely necessary, and I think a long-term payback is inevitable.
Thank you very much. Councillor Adam. Councillor Ozavari, would you like to speak to the motion?
No, thanks, Madam Mayor.
Any councillor wish to speak against the motion? Would any councillor wish to speak to the motion? No. I obviously did the trip this year. Also, I'd like to acknowledge Geraldine Christo, who's in the room tonight. We had an extremely busy 11 days, but I will say, as Councillor Adam has pointed out, we need to be represented. We need to be out on the world stage, and I will say it was the most incredible experience. Also, the opportunities that have come our way and return delegations to Australia, and also business conversations and discussions, and also working so closely with our local growers at the Fruit Logistica, the Asia Fruit Logistica in Hong Kong, was an incredible experience. Also, I saw firsthand the opportunity that Council had to have, as we had our own stand there, to actually really support our local growers and also showcase the Greater Shepparton region. We had Charles Woolley speaking in Mandarin on that particular stand. We had lots of conversations in regard to how special Greater Shepparton is and the opportunities we have. So, yes, I agree, Councillor Adam. I will say 11 days of extremely hard work. I think we had 4 hours downtime, but what an opportunity, and I'm really looking forward to hopefully, getting there again and continuing the strength of our region. All right, we'll now go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Motion carried unopposed. We now go to item 10.2, Instrument of Appointment and Authorisation Planning and Environment Act 1987. The recommendation is also on page 82. Would a councillor like to move a motion?
I'll move the recommendation, Madam Mayor. Printed on page 82.
Thank you, Councillor Hazeman. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Summer. Councillor Hazeman, would you like to speak to the motion?
It's essentially an administrative type process that new members of staff need to be authorised officers, and the only way that can happen under the Planning and Environment Act is by resolution of the Council.
Thank you very much. Councillor Summer, would you like to speak to the motion? Would any councillor wish to speak against the motion? Would any councillor wish to speak to the motion? We will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Motion carried unopposed. Councillors, we now go to item 10.3, Shepparton Railway Pedestrian Overpass and Shared Pathway Linkages on page 85. The recommendation is on page 86. Would a councillor like to move a motion?
I'm happy to move that, Madam Mayor. The recommendation on page 86, consisting of items, it's got 1 and 5 here, but I'm assuming it should be 1 and 2. I'm happy to move those.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder, please?
Visible link.
Councillor Ozavari. Councillor Giovannetti.
Madam Mayor, what this motion is doing is authorising the exhibition of this railway pedestrian overpass. There is a fair bit of conjecture out there in the community at the moment. I've had a number of phone calls, as have a number of other councillors, in relation to this. I think one of the things that we do need to make quite clear...
Sorry, thank you for that.
One of the things we do need to make quite clear is this is a VicTrack program. It's not a council program as such.
Thank you very much. Sorry, who seconded that one?
I did.
Councillor Alzavari, would you like to speak to the motion?
No, thanks.
Thank you very much. Any councillor wish to speak against the motion? Any councillor wish to speak to the motion? Summer.
I'll speak to this motion. I think it's a great project. I've already been contacted by a ratepayer who wanted to know if it was April 1st. They didn't think it was value for money and that it cost too much. And I can understand that they might think that without looking at the detail, but it is part of our core responsibility to make sure infrastructure and street design and amenities all are in line with community expectation, and that area where people are actually arriving at our town is highly run down. So I'm very supportive of it, and we do have many projects at the moment on the go, so we are being quite ambitious. Not all of them are funded. Obviously, this is still requiring funds, but we never know which projects are going to catch the eye of state and federal grants. So we need to be shovel ready with these projects for when we can get moving. But every one of our interests need to offer the best first impression to visitors. We invest so much in trying to get people to come to Shepparton. First impressions matter. We want people to keep coming back. And the demographic around there is largely industrial. It's quite tired. We'll be putting in footpaths with wayfinding, public art, streetscapes, all those things to encourage pedestrian activity. And that should lead people towards the CBD, which will stimulate small business and improve our overall health when we're walking. Those with physical disabilities can better access the train station for medical appointments in Melbourne. I'm pretty impressed with the overpass that has a universally accessible lift as part of the design. So hopefully these upgrades, once we can get moving on them, will increase the number of train commuters, which will further bolster our argument for federal funding to increase the number of train services. It's that chicken and the egg argument I don't necessarily subscribe to, but it is clear that we're doing our best to keep up our end of the bargain in competing with other comparable regional centres like Bendigo, Ballarat or Seymour.
Thank you very much. Would any other council wish to speak to the motion? We will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Motion carried, unopposed. Councillors will now go to page 96, item 10.4, proposed park name, Sherwood Park, Archers Field Estate, Maribna. The recommendation is on page 97. Would the council like to move a motion, please?
Yes, Madam Mayor, I'll move the recommendation printed on page 97.
Thank you, Councillor Hazeman. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Sutton. Councillor Hazeman, would you like to speak to the motion?
The recommendation is pretty straightforward. It's authorising the exhibition of a proposed name, park name, and I thought it sort of rather appealed to my sense of humour that an estate, Archers Field, which has an archery sort of theme, and that the naming within it, you know, Fletcher Avenue and Quiver Terrace and Arrowsmith Crescent and now Sherwood Park, does appeal to my sense of humour, and I think it's quite a unique approach from the developers.
Thank you for that. Councillor Sutton, would you like to speak to the motion?
No, thanks, Madam Mayor.
Any council wish to speak against the motion? Would any council wish to speak for the motion? We will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Motion carried, unopposed. Councillors, we now go to item 10.5 on page 100. GV Link Solar Lease, advertising intention to enter into a lease agreement. Please note that in the recommendation there is a slight mistake. The folio number, which is noted as 892, should be 891. Would a council like to move a motion, please? Council like to move a motion? Councillor Giovannetti.
Madam Mayor, I'm happy to move the recommendation on page 101, which includes items 1, 2, 3 and 4 with that amendment that you mentioned to the folio number.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Sutton. Councillor Giovannetti, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. It's really great that this project is getting off the ground. Finally, it's been quite some time since we first discussed this. And there's been quite a considerable amount of negotiation between council and the parties involved to get it to the point where we now have a lease document that we're advertising our intention to enter into that agreement. I think the quicker this project gets up and running, the better, because I see this as an ideal opportunity between council and a community organisation to get something very worthwhile up and running. It's going to benefit a large proportion of the community.
Thank you very much, Councillor Giovannetti. Councillor Sutton, would you like to speak to the motion?
I'd like to say that it's great to see the community entering into a lease agreement with this, the Marupna Solar Proprietary Limited, and I think this is going to be a great use for the part of GV linked land that's been idle for quite a few years, so it'd be lovely to see something on it and something that's going to assist the community.
Thank you very much. Would any councillor wish to speak against the motion? Would any councillor wish to speak to the motion? We'll now go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Motion carried, unopposed. Councillors, we now go to item 11 on page 106, reports from councillors, nil received. Also on page 106 is item 12, 13 and 14. Number 12, reports from special and advisory committees, nil received. Item 13, notice of motion, amendment or rescission, nil received. Item 14, documents for signing and sealing, nil received. We now go to page 107, item 15.1, councillors' community interaction and briefing program. The recommendation is on page 108. Would a councillor like to move a motion? Councillor Adam.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll move that. Sorry, what page is the motion on? Oh, we got that the summary of the council's community interaction and briefing program and assemblies of councillors be received.
Very much. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Abdullah. Councillor Adam, would you like to speak to the motion?
Well, just briefly. It's all there in front of you. It just shows all the different activities and events that councillors have attended.
Thank you very much. Councillor Abdullah.
Further comments?
Councillor wish to speak against the motion? The councillor wish to speak for the motion? We will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Motion carried, unopposed. We now go to item 16 on page 109, urgent business, not included on the agenda, nil received. 17, confidential management reports, nil received. Item 17.1, designation of confidentiality of information report attachments. It's also on page 109, as is the recommendation. Would a councillor like to move a motion, please?
Madam Mayor, I'm happy to move the recommendation on page 109, items 1, 2, 3 and 4.
Thank you very much. Councillor Giovannetti, do I have a seconder, please?
I'll second, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Hazeman, thank you. Councillor Giovannetti, would you like to speak to the motion?
It's all very straightforward, Madam Mayor, that this is, we're stating that these items 1, 2, 3 and 4 are of a confidential nature and that we can't speak about them to anybody.
Thank you very much. Councillor Hazelman?
No, Madam Mayor.
Would any councillor wish to speak against the motion? Would any councillor wish to speak to the motion? We will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Motion carried.
Now, Madam Mayor, before we close the meeting, can I just have everyone's attention for a moment? Can we be permitted to speak through you? I just want to make mention of one of our staff members who will be leaving our employ very shortly, someone who has a lot to do with these actual meetings. I just want to congratulate Marie Martin, who's over here on my left. Marie will be leaving us after about 5 years. Is that correct, Marie? 5 sounds better. She's been an integral part of this actual meeting process, even though she regularly forgets to give me my actual agenda copy. That being said...
you lose it, but that's...
No, she's been a really great asset, and it's a shame to lose her, but I wish her and her family all the best.
Yes, and I'm sure we'll agree. Thank you so much, Marie. So, councillors, directors, people in the gallery, people watching tonight, I would like to take this opportunity to wish everyone a very happy and joyful and safe Christmas. I'd also like to thank my fellow councillors, directors, Peter, our CEO, in regard to the efforts everyone has put in this year. I think we've had a great year, a really positive year, and I think there's better things to come coming into 2019. So, Merry Christmas, everyone, and looking forward to working with you all again in 2019.